do you follow some kind of thumb rule, especially when you're saying that, the strategic planning and the way you go about doing is more intuitive? So do you actually have some rule of thumb maybe which you follow when you're thinking about, your strategy formulation and strategy execution?
Well, it would be so easy if one had a rule of thumb. But if there are one or two things I try to do to sort of keep things in perspective and find the balance. One is to actually step away, to get out of. I think my best strategic insights come when I'm running or exercising or out away from the immediate work environment. So and that's why I also believe in going out into the market and actually seeing customers in their own turf. I will always, given a choice, not have the customer come into my office. I want to go. I don't mind in as you know, the book district in Delhi is Daryaganj, and it's narrow lanes and you can't park, and it's most of the time the weather's terrible. But I like to walk those roads with my sales colleagues. The other things which happen is while you're on the road actually. You're traveling with sales, marketing colleagues, and those informal conversations, and the clever ones really are keeping things in their pocket to talk to you in the car ride from Pune to Mumbai, or from, Ahmedabad to Baroda, because you have those long car rides where you're on the road, and they will actually have this. So, it's actually stepping out of the routine. In a sense, my strategy, as I said, comes out of routine, but the best insights I get are. So you need to, and sometimes it's really difficult to do. Weeks and months may pass and I don't even recognize the fact that I haven't stepped away. And suddenly I am in a situation where I am forced to, and then balance comes.
All right. So, the next question which I have for you is, normally in teaching strategy, when we talk about strategy formulation as one and implementation as the, which in a way is interrelated, right? So, what from your, from the place you're sitting, what is more challenging? Is formulating, as you said, that it takes months and, maybe more time to formulate. What is more challenging?
Actually, it may sometimes not take months. It may be just as I said, it just comes out as a, the jigsaw fits at a certain point of time. Yes, it's been going on for a long time, but it just sort of fits in a way that you. What is more difficult, formulation or implementation?
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, I would say that, you may consider it a cop-out, but I would say that they're both equally challenging, equally important, equally... and I think one flows into the other, so if you haven't formulated...
That will impact the implementation.
This thing, and sometimes while you're implementing what you think has been well formulated, you actually find that it becomes difficult. So I think we live, and my team will actually vouch for this, so that I will sell them, and you have to internally sell. I'm using that word deliberately. I will sell them a concept or idea and say, and they get excited and they start running with it. And when they have sort of got the momentum and the traction, and they come back with the progress they've made in a very excited and happy way, I'm actually in a different space. So I'm saying, yes, that we have to do that, but I got nuanced and I'm thinking of
something else.
Yeah.
Maybe something
and sometimes
more.
they're a little bit, downcast by, but this was the focus, now is the focus, So, but they're both, that's part of my process of both the formulation and the implementation. So as I told you, for me, it's not linear.
Right.
It goes back and forth. And it's sort of, they merge at some level, both it sounds a little crazy, but actually it works for me.
Now this question, is coming from the thought of, strategic blunders. So have you ever committed a strategic blunder, and if you have, how you then went back to, kind of take a detour or whatever and then manage that situation?
Now, I don't know how one defines a strategic blunder, but yes, one makes mistakes, and I would have made hundreds, I'm sure. I think that's part of the risk. There are two things here. One is that you hopefully work, you have and I'm trying to always have a sort of a multi-pronged system where there is a safety net, so that, and there is a mechanism of feedback. Right. And sometimes it all fails, and that's when it crashes, because you have these checks and balances and they all fail. You know, and teams play a really important role in that. Sometimes they may hesitate to, you know, prick your bubble or say it's not going to work, or sometimes somebody will actually say it's not going to work. That happens with me sometimes. We say, but I really feel strongly that it can work, and so we have to negotiate that space. So you may be right. Oftentimes I am right, but sometimes I'm wrong. I think the thing about being wrong, the most difficult thing about being wrong for somebody at my level is to first admit. Oh gosh, yeah, that was and I was the. And you know, once you admit that, then the second thing, if you are a responsible head of any organization, you have to do damage containment. So you regroup, clean up, admit the mistake, cancel it, and I think that's where one hesitates too long. If one hesitates too long, first to admit, because it says, you know, you see it as a failure of yourself, and then you repairing the damage, and that's a mistake which actually managers at various levels make. But the higher you go, the more costly that mistake becomes. So, but the biggest sort of blunder one makes, I mean, if you ask me for one big blunder that you make and which is very costly, it's with people. If you don't hire right, if you don't assess right in the sense that you think something, that's very expensive. It's very scary. I mean, I think for me personally, that's the scariest thing. And that's, you know, if that happens, then, as I said, you have to admit it to yourself. You don't have to announce it to the, and then you have to contain it, even if it means taking a drastic decision.
So tough calls has to be taken.
Yeah, you know, you have to, because otherwise the cost to your organization is too high. And it's the most difficult call to make.
And you have already shared a lot of insights about strategic planning and execution. So looking back, what have you learned about building a large company?
Well, if you want really off the top of, well, you don't do it alone. You don't do it alone. You're part of a much bigger. But having said that, you bear the burden alone to a large degree. So you bear the burden of the mistakes, you bear the burden of people's expectations. You know? And it's tough. It's quite tough to, I mean, like, one of the things you can't make everybody happy all the time, even if you are in the making happy business, which most leaders can't be, because, you know, you have things you need to do. But even if you are, you can't. And that's something which is, you know, everybody's a human being. You like to have that feeling of, you know. So I think that is quite a big learning for me. I would say that for me, most of the insights I have are about people. I think people can make or break individuals, teams, team dynamic, managing. I mean, those are the lessons which I think, and there's no way of you don't learn them in management school, unfortunately. You learn them in life, but you need to be able to, I'm getting a little philosophic here, but you need to be able to, connect those. But the way you are, in every sphere of life, you know, when you lead an organization, then your self changes. So the self you are, even outside that leadership role, in your other roles, also evolve and change in ways which are actually influenced by your role as a leader. You know? At one level it's a burden, but at another level it's also very empowering to feel that, you know, you can make a difference to people's work lives. You can really make a difference. And that's one of the reasons for coming to work every morning. That if you get things right, you make a positive difference. On the other hand, you know, if you make errors, then, you know, the impact can also be devastating. So I think, I would say that if you want one insight, that would be it.
All right. So thank you very much for taking out your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
It was a pleasure having the interaction. Right, with this, we will conclude the video session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.